My favorite moment every year is when I start to see little signs or student art on the wall without them asking, Kristen, can I hang this up? And it's a really big milestone that just tells me that they understand that the school belongs to them as much as it does to any teacher or adult that works here.
This is the Education Crisis, what it is and how to fix it. I'm your host, Tembi Duncan. This series features renowned education expert Dr. Charles Reigluth, author of the book, Vision and Action, Reinventing Schools Through Personalized, Competency-Based Education. Together, we examine the crisis in American education. What has caused the crisis? What our schools need to be like to fix the crisis? How to successfully transform to that very different kind of school, and what you can do to help your schools to transform. Chapter 3. How can we personalize student learning experiences? Dr. Reigluth, in Chapter 2 of this series, you described a new paradigm of education in which student progress is based on learning rather than time. In this new paradigm, students are not forced to move on before they've learned the material. In this new paradigm, they won't accumulate gaps in their learning that would make it harder to grasp related material in the future, which would essentially condemn them to a disappointing performance in their studies, or even worse, lead them to just give up altogether and quit school. This new paradigm sounds exciting, but how can a teacher manage a classroom with students all moving on as soon as they've learned the material? They would all be learning different things at any given time.
Right. In the current industrial age paradigm, a teacher wouldn't be able to manage learning-based student progress. As we discussed in Chapter 2, student assessment or testing has to change from norm reference, where each student's performance is compared to that of other students, to criterion referenced assessment, where each student's performance is compared to a standard or criterion for mastery. We call this competency-based assessment. This means that student records need to change from report cards that show a grade for an entire course, which tells you nothing about what the student has learned, to report cards that list all the understandings and competencies the student has learned. So a teacher would have to be in a school where competency-based student assessment and records have replaced what we currently have in our industrial age schools. But the school would need a lot more changes as well.
Wow, like what?
Well, there needs to be customized or personalized learning. Obviously, the pace of learning must be personalized since students learn at different rates, but also the teaching methods, how students learn. The focus needs to change from what the teacher does to what the student does. And learning science has shown that students usually do best through active learning or learning by doing. Now, there are many kinds of learning by doing. There's project-based learning, problem-based learning, inquiry learning, maker-based learning, hands-on learning, and more. Even conversation-based learning can and should be learning by doing, depending on what is being learned, like higher-order thinking skills and some kinds of understanding. I use the term project-based learning to refer to all these kinds of learning by doing. With project-based learning, different students can progress at different rates in their projects and thus be learning different things at any point in time. Other important benefits of project-based learning are that it improves student motivation, which is essential for accelerating learning, and it improves the student's ability to use their learning in the real world, called transfer of learning.
This makes sense, but now I'm thinking about Chapter 2, where I mentioned my search for an appropriate school for my daughter. In my research, I'd heard of some problems with project-based learning, like it can be inefficient because students are left on their own to discover the skills and understandings that they need to be successful with any given project.
Yeah, that's a fair criticism of the way that project-based learning is often done in schools, but technology can really help here. Digital tools can provide very realistic, immersive project environments where a small team of students can work on a project together, even when they're in different locations, until they reach a point in the project when they need a new skill or understanding. At that point, the project can automatically pause and send each student to their individual tablet, where each receives a personalized tutorial. The tutorial provides demonstrations and explanations of how to do it, followed by opportunities to practice the skill or understanding. The practice continues until the student meets the criterion for mastery, And the tutorials can be personalized using artificial intelligence tutors.
Oh, wow. This seems kind of complicated. How does this actually benefit the students?
Well, there are many benefits of this. First is that students learn more quickly and easily. Second is increasing student motivation. Since the student knows they need to learn the skill or understanding to succeed in the project, they're more motivated to learn it. The third benefit is ensuring mastery. A big problem with project-based learning is that sometimes all the work in a project is done by just one or two students on the team, so the others don't learn what they were supposed to learn. With each student having to practice until perfect, we ensure that all the students on a team have mastered the important material.
That's a big one because we've all seen the challenges of group projects. They can breed resentment and frustration when you feel like not everybody is pulling their weight, but everyone gets the same grade.
Yes, that's why ensuring mastery for each team member is so integral to the success of project-based learning.
Are there other benefits for students?
There are. A fourth benefit is generalization. Another big problem with project-based learning is that complex skills and understandings are applied differently in different situations. Since a project typically only requires a new competency to be used once in one situation in order for students to move on in the project, the students don't learn how it needs to be done differently in different situations. But the practice until perfect approach uses different cases and different situations in the practice, so that each student learns how to use the skill or understanding in the full range of situations they'll likely encounter in the real world. A fifth benefit is something called automatization.
Now that sounds robotic.
No, don't worry. Automatization is just a fancy word for learning something until the performance becomes automatic, kind of like brushing your teeth. Many complex cognitive skills require the use of more basic skills for their performance. When those basic skills are overlearned to the point where the performance can be done without thinking, that frees up a person's thinking to focus on the more important, higher-level parts of that complex skill. So this automatization of lower-level skills is essential to building true expertise. And this can only be done through the just-in-time tutorials I've been talking about.
Sure, but won't we still need to test students to confirm that they've achieved mastery?
Actually, no, because with practice until perfect, we know when a competency has been mastered. So there's no need to waste the student's time and the teacher's time on tests. So one more benefit of project-based learning is that there are no more high-pressure tests. This makes learning more enjoyable for the student, which increases motivation to learn, but it also eliminates a time-consuming and unenjoyable part of the teacher's job.
Well, that's a win-win situation for students and the teachers.
Absolutely. In sum, project-based learning with just-in-time tutorials is proven to be a more effective, efficient, and motivating approach to learning than is traditional teacher-centered education.
This is a really impressive approach to transforming the way teachers teach and students learn. You've talked about the benefits of a team of students working on a project together. Can you say more about that process?
Sure. Some of the projects can be individual, but increasingly the workplace entails working in teams. So it helps the students a lot if they can develop teaming skills. They learn them best by doing them, with guidance. So a majority of students' projects should entail working on small teams. Another advantage of teaming is that teammates can help each other learn. This is particularly important if just-in-time tutorials are not available. Third, most students are more motivated to work on a team than to work alone. And finally, working on a team helps students to understand, get along with, and like students who are different from them. This is very important to a healthy society and a healthy democracy. Many students in homeschooling and private schools have little opportunity to work with and get to know students who are different from them. This is a serious problem for our country, and it's an important reason not to abandon public schools. But the teacher must pay attention to such issues as team composition and team training, and to accommodate the fact that students learn at different rates, the faster learners are on more projects at any given time.
So, learning-based student progress depends on competency-based assessment and records, personalized pace and instructional methods, project-based learning with just-in-time tutorials, and collaborative team-based learning. Okay, I can see how each of these features increases the success of the others. They depend on each other in order to work well. Are there other features in this new learning paradigm?
Yeah, there sure are. Knowledge work typically requires workers to work in teams, but it also typically requires workers to be more self-directed. And this is not just important for the workplace. With increased complexity in almost everything we do, lifelong learning is now essential to happiness and success in one's personal life. And self-direction is very important to successful lifelong learning.
Is self-direction something we can develop on our own, or does it need to be taught to us?
Well, teaching certainly helps. The best way to learn self-direction is by doing it, with coaching, of course, from one's teacher and peers. Self-direction can be developed in several ways. For one, students can select some learning targets to pursue their interests and to further develop any particular talents they have. Second, since any learning target can be learned through a variety of different projects, students can select from different projects for a given target based on their interests. Third, students can manage their projects through such activities as setting milestones and timelines, monitoring their progress, monitoring and addressing any learning problems they may encounter, and so forth. Fourth, having an artificially intelligent tutor allows each student to choose when they want another demonstration or explanation, to choose a harder or easier demonstration or practice, and much more. And another benefit of self-direction is that it motivates students to learn.
Well, that's a very empowering approach. You're really putting the students' learning in their own hands and giving them options for achieving mastery. You've mentioned motivation several times. Why is that so important?
That's a really good question. In our current industrial age paradigm, students are mainly motivated by grades because the way students are taught is typically boring. I've already talked a bit about the negative effects of this. As a tool for sorting out learners who need more time, it discourages those learners and holds them back from reaching their potential. But there is another negative effect. Grades are an artificial motivator. They have nothing to do with loving learning. In fact, for most students, grades make them hate learning. Educators call this an extrinsic motivator for that reason. In contrast, an intrinsic motivator cultivates a love of learning itself rather than cultivating a love of showing that you're better than someone else. Intrinsic motivation benefits all learners.
I see. So what kinds of intrinsic motivators are there?
A researcher named David McClellan has identified three major motivators based on human needs. One is the need for achievement, the achievement motive. There's a great feeling of satisfaction when you achieve something, especially if it's challenging. In the new paradigm, competency-based education accomplishes this every time a student masters a new competency in a tutorial and receives a badge or micro-credential. And successfully completing an entire project provides a similar sense of accomplishment and empowerment. The second human motive is the need for affiliation. The joy of working with others, helping them, and not letting them down. This is one of the reasons why kids love team sports so much and are motivated to perform well. Team-based learning accomplishes this in the new paradigm. Now, the third human motive is the need for power. People are more motivated to do something when they do it by their own choice and in their own way. Educators call this agency. In the new paradigm, self-directed learning accomplishes this, and it builds self-confidence and skills for lifelong learning and success in all aspects of one's life. These three intrinsic motivators are more powerful than extrinsic motivators like grades, and they promote a love of learning.
This is a lot to think about. This new paradigm of education is so different from what we experienced in school. So, we have learning-based student progress, competency-based assessment in student records, personalized learning, project-based learning with just-in-time tutorials, collaborative learning, and self-directed learning.
Yes, each of these features makes the others work better. They work together like a team. This is the essence of a new paradigm compared to piecemeal educational reforms. We call this digital age paradigm the learner-centered paradigm because it stands in contrast to the teacher-centered paradigm. And the exciting thing is that more than 1,000 schools nationwide have undertaken this kind of change with great success, proving its value for students, their families, communities, and country. If we want to make America great, this is the way to do it.
Here's Dee Thomas, Jim Wortman, and Nick Ryan from the Minnesota New Country School. Dee, how do you personalize learning at your school?
I think when we started the school, we looked at things that didn't work for a lot of students, and we threw all those things out. So courses and bells and buzzers and students having to raise their hand to do something, those things we all threw out. We looked at the number of things that didn't work in a traditional district for a lot of students, and then implemented those changes here. So we decided that they needed to do projects and become more world related than course related.
Nick, do you find that these projects resonate with the students' interests and build excitement?
Typically, we personalize learning through these projects. Well, we generally don't, the students do it. My job then is to take their ideas and figure out, oh, you really like welding, you just love working with metal. You make this cool thing that you want to make, and then we're going to come at it and pull a little bit of like science in there and try to figure out sort of welding is behind some science. We could also look at a little history. Anything's got history. So what's the history of metallurgy? Can you do a little piece on that? So generally, I think we don't really struggleize to personalize learning with projects. I really feel like students do that quite well on their own. They kind of know what they're interested in for the most part and are willing to put ideas out there.
Jim, do you have any problems with student motivation?
Yeah, just like we have problems with our own motivation. So then we have to diagnose what's behind that motive, that lack of motivation. We use Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The mission of the school is to guide students towards self-actualization. Pretty clear. Like, what motivates you? How do you learn? What are your strengths? What do you need to do to get there? And then what does it feel like when you're actualizing? Pro tip for teachers out there, keep bananas on your desk. Bananas are cheap, and you give a kid a banana, you show you care about him. Then we look at what's going on with connections and relationships. So we kind of have a diagnostic process of if a student isn't motivated, what are the factors behind the lack of motivation? When you make something, you're proud of it. And when they're proud of what they made, they're feeling that little bit of actualization, like, oh, I am good at welding. So we're just looking for those glimmers of like positive self-identity. Then we build on that. And that's where the motivation comes in. So we teach motivation. And, there's no more powerful feeling to me than you see a completely unmotivated child come through our doors. Maybe they haven't been in our system and they have a great mistrust of, maybe they're coming in ninth grade, they have a mistrust of the education system. They don't feel good about themselves as a learner. And you can take that student and you can makes an intervention in their lives. That's powerful.
Okay, and how do you deal with behavior problems like bullying?
A lot of the reasons we're seeing students transferring in here is leaving bullying behind at past schools. So they come to New Country and they find their home. With that, then they are very protective of the culture. They're very protective of their home that they've created. So they won't, I would say, don't accept bullying as a whole. As our students develop into leaders and they're actualizing and they have self-esteem, they're not accepting bullying and they're making sure it doesn't happen, and we're hearing about an issue before it comes.
What about truancy, student absences?
My own two 13-year-olds go to school here, and if I have to miss a day of work, so I've got something in my personal life, I got to take a day off. We kind of live far away, so they don't come, and they get mad. Like, they don't like it when I take days off because they want to go to school. And I think most of our students are in the same boat. They want to be here. They enjoy coming here. They feel strong connections, strong relationships here. I'm guessing compared to traditional districts, we're dealing with a lot less absenteeism than most other places are.
Given that students learn at different rates, how do you personalize student progress?
Sometimes we have students who just want to kick out a whole bunch of projects. And then we have our students who are kind of the dreamers, and they don't want to be rushed because what they want to, in the end, what that matters to them is the quality of their project in their mind. They help us define the quality of their projects.
I see. And what if a student needs support while working on a project to acquire a difficult skill or understanding?
The advisory model, again, is anywhere between 13 and 17 students. But for me, we are an advisory that works together and supports each other. It's kind of like a situation where you're creating success for a group of people, for a group of students, and they then learn self-direction from each other.
Your advisory group becomes your family here. And, sometimes you just say, could you help student X do this because they're having some problems with it, and you have it down perfectly. But to pull that one student aside and say, can you go and help this other student, works really well.
We're joined by Nikita Katan and Kristen Goodell from the Redbridge School in San Francisco, California. Kristen, how do you implement personalized learning in your school?
So there are a few ways that we personalize learning at Redbridge. Each student has their own work plan. Even the youngest students at our school, which are 5-year-olds, start learning how to plan out their work time and make choices for what they want to practice and what they want to get better at. Then they'll select from those options what they want to practice each day. There's a lot of guidance at these early stages so that kids aren't just selecting the same shelf work every day that they think is very fun. For example, there was a student in my math group that really wanted to earn the learning credit called Write 0 to 10. And she really understood that the more she practiced, the more she was moving on her learning line for that. And that it wasn't just a one-time thing, oh, I did it one time and now I've memorized how to make my numbers, but that it needed to be several days after days to keep practicing for that. And then she would show me it with excitement and say, oh, I think I'm ready to sign up for this learning credit. I think I need to just practice one more day. Another way we personalize learning is choice time. So in Autonomy Level 1, we have a daily choice time that students are selecting different play options, and they often pitch ideas of what they want to have open for choice time, and even they teach each other things that they know how to do, for example, folding origami or how to draw a unicorn. And so they bring in some of those things that they love into our day here at school.
That's impressive. What do you do about student motivation?
I would say student motivation is one of the most important things for us at our school, and I'm sure for teachers across the world. The systems that we mentioned earlier help create intrinsic motivation. We don't really rely on extrinsic motivation systems. My favorite moment every year is when I start to see little signs or student art on the wall without them asking, Kristen, can I hang this up? And it's a really big milestone that just tells me that they understand that the school belongs to them as much as it does to any teacher or adult that works here. Another time we see students completely engaged and motivated is in deep dives. And 3 times a year, we pause our academic groups and students engage in a complete learning cycle, which we call a deep dive. And these are 2-week-long project-based units that are based on student interest, and they scale up in student involvement in creating the question that's explored and the research that they do and the project that's made as they move from autonomy level to autonomy level.
Nikita, what about project-based learning?
So in our deep dives, which are our project-based learning times of the term, that is really when our work and character habits curriculum especially comes into play and really is the focus of those projects. The projects aren't so focused on the exact content, although as they go through into later stages of autonomy levels, the rigor of the actual content is also important. But it's really about the social emotional skills that they're developing through these projects, especially around collaboration and the work habit skills or the skills of being a self-driven learner. And those are the sorts of skills that come into play in our projects.
That's wonderful. Could you talk some more about student self-direction or agency?
The entire Redbridge model is designed around fostering a sense of agency in students and having the motivation as well as the skills to set meaningful goals for yourself and work toward them. We have work habits curriculum, which is our opportunity to explicitly teach and coach students the habits of setting a meaningful goal for yourself, managing your time, knowing your resources, collaborating with others, all the things you need to drive your own learning. And we have student-directed times of the day so that they're getting the opportunity to put those work habits and that self-direction into actual practice. And we have a mastery-based model of assessment around learning credits that's really about mastery toward agency, where students get to have voice and choice in their assessment and demonstrating, when they get to demonstrate that they're ready and showing proficiency on certain skills through the learning credit system.
Great. I would imagine that this helps reduce student behavior problems.
We really view student behavior as a form of communication, and we are working to help kids decipher what it is that they need instead of viewing behavior from a fixed standpoint of a student is being a bully or is a bully. We also strive to give students the language to advocate for their needs and to see other people's perspectives and to solve interpersonal problems. And we teach kids about their brains and what's happening when they're very mad or very frustrated, that the thinking part of their brain cannot activate and they can't really solve problems in that state. So we teach them how to take a break and then come back to talk to their friend when they're more calm and ready.
And what if parents are having behavior problems with their child?
On the teacher side, we're working to build relationship with students. We're working to partner with parents to really figure out what the problems are, what the source of these things that are popping up could be. And that makes, I think, all the difference, that it's not a set of school rules that everyone is doing A, B, C, D, but it's all about the reason why we're here together and the important place that we're trying to build together with everyone.
I'm really impressed with the work you're doing. You provide a great example for other schools to follow. What we heard from Redbridge School and Minnesota New Country School highlights the power and possibility of personalized learning. Both schools show us that when students are guided to be leaders in their own learning journey, they rise to the challenge. Before we end this chapter, listen closely for a special offer. Listeners of this podcast receive 20% off Dr. Ryguth's book, Vision and Action, with the exclusive code VA20 when you order directly from solutiontree.com. This offer is only available for a limited time. Visit solutiontree.com to order your copy today. We're so grateful to everyone who supported our GoFundMe campaign, including Roberto Joseph, Unak Beck, Sinem Aslan, and Nari Kim. The campaign is called Help End America's Education Crisis Now, and the link's in the show notes. Donate today to help us keep this podcast available to all. Thanks so much to Dr. Ryguth, as well as Nikita Katan and Kristen Goodell from the Redbridge School, and Dee Thomas, Jim Wortman, and Nick Ryan from the Minnesota New Country School. That's it for Chapter 3 of The Education Crisis, What It Is and How to Fix It. I'm Tembi Duncan, and remember, the future of education is in our hands.